Well, my thanks for that very kind introduction, and greetings to all of you. It's wonderful to be in a room of patriots. And to me, patriot is definitely not a dirty word. A little bit about my background. I grew up with the shooting sports, and I am a native Detroiter. And I mean the city, not the suburbs. We were originally east side. We lived in a duplex that's on Shaner, just south of 8 Mile. And on my way here, I drove by that. It's a little overgrown. I also drove by my grandmother's house on Goldburn between Griner and 7 Mile, and it's still standing, looking a little rough. Hope somebody takes care of it. But I saw some things driving through the city that were disappointing. But I also saw some things that gave me a tremendous amount of hope for this area. In the Second World War, we were the arsenal of democracy. We saved the world with our manufacturing prowess here. We have a work ethic that is second to none anywhere in the United States. Nobody works harder than we do here in the Midwest, and particularly in Michigan. We've seen the tough times. I think the worst of the tough times are behind us, and I think we all stand here in testimony that tough times never last, but tough people most definitely do. So I salute all of you. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the NRA and about being an NRA director. There are 76 of us that serve as directors. We are elected in staggered terms, classes of 25 for 3-year terms, and there is one person who is elected at the annual meeting at large to serve for a 1-year term. We are assigned to different committees. I'm honored to serve on the executive committee, and I've also been asked to chair their finance committee for the upcoming year for the first time. I have previously chaired the audit committee for many years, and I continue to serve on that, not surprising with an accounting background. And I also, since I'm a trap shooter, I serve on the shotgun shooting committee. I'm a bird hunter. Got some property up by Mackinac City. We are committed to Michigan. My oldest son and his new wife are residing up in Troy. She works at Chrysler. He works for United Paint over in Southfield. So we're here to stay, and we're definitely here to make it better. But all NRA directors are uncompensated volunteers, and we represent NRA members wherever they may be. The board really functions as if it's a legislature more so than a corporate board. We meet 3 times a year. We do set policy, and then we step back and we try to monitor and make sure we do our oversight and that NRA staff is doing what they're supposed to be doing. We presently have 5 million plus members in the National Rifle Association. If you do some polling, there are about 20 million members. I wish the other 15 million would pay their dues. It would help a lot. And our public face is that of the gun lobby. Okay, but in reality, that's about 20% of what we do. The other 80% involves a variety of very, very fascinating activities. First and foremost, NRA is a civil rights organization founded in 1879 by former generals of Mr. Lincoln's Army, the Army of the Republic. And it was formed by these gentlemen for one simple reason. Yankee soldiers couldn't shoot worth a damn. And they decided they needed an organization to teach marksmanship. So that was the inception of NRA, to teach marksmanship, to engage in education and training. Americans, being what they are, we love competition, so it evolved to competitive shooting. And of course, accumulation and collections of all of the paraphernalia that go along with that. So many guns, so little time for those of us that collect them. We got into the legislative business in 1934 because we had to, not because we wanted to. With the National Firearms Act of 1934, it was apparent that if we did not get engaged, there might not be the opportunity for citizens to keep and bear the private arms of their choice. I actually should say people keep and bear the private arms of their choice. So we became engaged in the legislative arena. And that's what you always see on the news. And we're certainly going to talk about that this evening. But some other things you might not know. NRA is the largest publisher of outdoor magazines in North America. We print and publish well in excess of 5 million magazines a month. Okay? And we do this 12 months out of the year. We have 3 TV shows that are presently airing. American Rifleman, The Gun Gurus, which is about firearms collecting, and NRA All Access, which is a brand new program. It replaces the Friends of NRA show that air. And these are all on the Outdoor channel and the satellite and the cable channels. We manage a multitude of websites. There is an NRA app for your smartphone and tablet. It is free. I urge you to get it. One touch with the app. It's available at the App Store. Again, it's free. Hit that touch or hit the app and it will bring up NRA alerts. It will bring up NRA news and it'll bring up NRA blog. And through those you can navigate to all of the other NRA sites. So you can stay very much informed. We have some fresh young faces that are airing on our streaming broadcast, NRA Freestyle. There are 2 wonderful commercials out there right now to join NRA and to tell about NRA Freestyle. And I would urge you to search these out and take a look at them. They'll come right up on your tablet or your smartphone. NRA functions because we have well in excess of 100,000 volunteers of all types that make us go. We've got well over 100,000 firearms and safety instructors and range safety officers. We have about 10,000 police instructors. We have on the order of 400 or so election volunteer coordinators. We have Boy Scout merit badge counselors. And then we have the 1,000 Friends of NRA committees, each of whom have 5 to 10 people on these committees doing fundraising for the NRA Foundation. NRA operates the NRA Whittington Center in Raton, New Mexico, a 30,000-acre facility, which has every kind of shooting range you care to name on it, some RV sites, a beautiful trap range, hunting opportunities in the fall for everybody but me and any other board member, because we are prohibited. We can't even buy a hunt there. Okay. Reason for that, I think, demonstrates the ethics of NRA. There were people who said when the Whittington Center was acquired that, oh, it's going to be a private club for the board members. Well, we took care of that. Just said off limits for that. If I go shoot there, I can go stay there, have to pay for it, as I should. I'm no different, no better than any other member of the association. That's what we should do. NRA operates 3 museums. The National Firearms Museum in Fairfax, Virginia, which is at headquarters, which is a fabulous, fabulous facility. Anybody been there? Anybody visited? It's wonderful. We have the Museum of the Southwest at Raton, New Mexico, at the Whittington Center, which is a new facility. And we just opened the Sporting Firearms Museum at Bass Pro Shop's flagship store, headquarters store in Springfield, Missouri. And this is about between a 5,000 and a 6,000 square foot facility that tells the history of sporting arms in the United States of America. It has the Lewis and Clark pneumatic rifle there. It has General Eisenhower's 20-gauge shotgun there, which I have a picture of, and I was privileged to handle at one point in time. That was really special for me. He was president when I was born. I miss him. Wish we had him back. We have NRA Outdoors, which is getting into the outfitting business. There are a multitude of NRA shooting events. The national matches are on right now at Camp Perry, and the small bore is taking place at Bristol, Indiana as we speak. It is the final day of small bore today. I happened to go over there yesterday and visit with some folks. Over 1,000 Friends of NRA events raising money for the NRA Foundation, which sponsors the Youth Education Summit for 50 of our best and brightest applicants. They go to Washington, D.C. and spend a week being educated in freedom by NRA staff and a distinguished panel of speakers. The Youth Hunter Education Challenge is held at Raton, New Mexico at the Whittington. That is underway right now. The NRA Civil Rights Defense Fund. NRA is probably involved in somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 court cases right now. You don't hear about them. But they're nationwide. There are things such as a person whose aircraft got rerouted mid-flight and they had to change planes at the Port of New Jersey airport. Well, they had to claim their baggage, go out, come back in. They had a firearm lawfully transported in their luggage. They declared it, need to get to their destination, and for their honesty, they get arrested because they can't have a gun in New Jersey. Okay, there are people. There was a lady who was a GI who was going home for his mother's funeral, had a sidearm with him, ended up in New York State, in New York City, got arrested, incarcerated, prevented from going to his mother's funeral. Okay. These are the types of abuses that the NRA Civil Rights Defense Fund fights against. The NRA Political Victory Fund, that's the money that we are able to put into candidates' campaigns. It pays for the little postcards you get that say support a certain candidate. They are pro-gun. The NRA Freedom Action Foundation is a voter education and a voter registration project sponsored by NRA. It is apolitical. We do not endorse one party or the other. And then, of course, there's the NRA Institute for Legislative Action, our gun lobby, if you will, headed very ably by Chris Cox and his staff. And they're the ones that fight the battles for us that help us keep and bear the private arms of our choice. There are some harsh realities to this. The battle for gun rights started post-Civil War in the South with the black codes to prevent emancipated African Americans from owning firearms, even though they were free men. It started in 1928 here in Michigan in advance of the National Firearms Act of 1934. That is why it says the Pistols Acts originally were dated 1928. And that is why we have some very, very bizarre definitions of firearms in Michigan, because they predate federal law. You can have a folding stock rifle that is a rifle for federal purposes and a pistol for the state of Michigan purposes. Okay? Now, can be a good thing, you know. Got a folding stock on your M1 carbine. It's a pistol, World War II paratrooper stock. Throw it in the back seat, loaded. You don't have a conservation violation. Now, will law enforcement recognize that? Probably not. But you get the idea, and I'm certainly not advocating a confrontation with law enforcement here. That's not a value-added activity. Okay. But what I'm pointing out is we have some very, very strange definitions. Which brings me to the ILA update here for Michigan, and courtesy of the NRA App. Although the Michigan legislature is not in session at this time, there are two bills pending that we'd like to get through before the end of the year. Senate bills 963, 64, 65, and 66, a package. They are the air gun reclassification package. You see, BB guns and air guns in the state of Michigan are considered firearms. The feds don't consider them firearms, but Michigan considers them firearms. So do 3 other states. Well, we're trying to get rid of that. And that's what this package of bills is designed to do. It will provide appropriate local control, and it protects their use on all private property, okay, by the time this package is done. So this is one that's worthy of support. And then there's SB 977, which seeks to provide active duty military personnel who are on duty outside of the state with the option to renew their CPLs through the mail. Under current Michigan law, they're required to submit the application in person. For active duty military, they definitely want to get rid of that. Believe me, they're trying to get rid of it for everything else, for everybody else. We ought to be able to renew through the mail. Most other states do. Okay. And the other aspect of this is we weren't able to accomplish it this time, although the legislative session is not over. But we'd like to get rid of our silly pistol registration law here in Michigan. That is a priority. We've had it since 1928. If that was truly going to make people safe, we would be one of the safest states, safest areas in the USA. And clearly it has been an abject failure. So we'd like to get rid of that. But that I don't know that will happen. It will take some time to work that through, but believe me, they are working on it. We have a very able liaison that is an NRA employee that is in and out of Lansing on a very, very regular basis, once or twice a month. He tends to do it very, very low profile because he's a lightning rod when he walks into the Capitol building. And the way the current administration is working, they want to do as much with firearms as possible off of the radar screens. Okay, it's just not Governor Snyder's issue. Okay, so we are doing remarkably well here, and we are, believe me, you are very, very ably served by our state liaison. Now, most, if not all, gun control measures are promoted as being in the interest of public safety. And although it is promoted on the basis of safety and security, and I'm about to make a fairly controversial statement here, okay? In my opinion, and let me be clear, what I'm presenting today here is my opinion. Okay, not the opinion of the National Rifle Association. Okay, only Mr. LaPierre and President Porter, First Vice President Alan Coors, Second Vice President Pete Brownell, the senior leadership of NRA, they are the ones who are authorized to speak officially for the association. I am not. So I'm giving you some editorial opinion here today. I believe there are many fellow directors and certainly a lot of NRA members that share my opinions, but they are opinions nonetheless. So please do not take what I'm saying as the official position of the association. With that said, the mother of all disclaimers here. My opinion, my personal opinion, I've thought about this a lot. All gun control is based in bigotry. I repeat that. In my opinion, all gun control is based in some form of bigotry. There's a feeling among the antis that somehow, since we own guns, or we want to own guns, we choose to own guns, we are somehow unclean. And I just reject that out of hand. That's ridiculous. It goes, you know, it goes back to the black codes, and there were racial overtones in the first gun laws. But not anymore. It's everybody. Doesn't matter what your gender is, what your religion is or not, what your sexual preference is or not, and certainly not your ethnic background. If you want to own a firearm, you're somehow defective in the eyes of the hardcore antis. And I object to that. So that's my controversial statement for the night. Okay. And I don't know, you know, the only way you can fight against that is just kill them with kindness and kill them with our good works. because we have a lot of very, very positive things going for us. Because at the end of the day, what our opposition has, what they present to us is just, again, in my opinion, hate-filled invective. They despise us because we choose to own guns. They despise us because we dare call ourselves patriots. They despise us because we believe in freedom. They despise us because we know that private ownership of firearms is the last defense against tyranny. Okay? They despise us because we understand the founding fathers, like Chairman Mao, understood that political power flows out of the end of a gun barrel. The difference between Mao and Jefferson, Franklin, Washington, Adams, all of the people that developed the Constitution, had the courage to execute the Declaration of Independence, they understood that political power flows from the end of a gun. And the difference is, they said, we, the people, will have the right to own them. End of discussion. Okay? That's the difference. But our friends on the other side, of course, don't want to acknowledge that. Let's talk about what the antis try to do to strip us of our right to keep and bear the private arms of our choice. There are a number of gambits that they run. They've been around for a long time. As I mentioned, it started post-Civil War. This is going to be an eternal battle. There will not be an end to it, folks. And I know that's discouraging. We have to fight it. Our kids have to fight it. Our grandchildren have to fight it. Their children will have to fight it. This will continue long after we have passed from the labors on this earth to refreshment in heaven. But it has to be done because freedom is very, very important. So what are some of these gambits? In general, first thing they want to do is create a bunch of red tape and inconvenience to own firearms. Our license to purchase handguns law in Michigan is probably a prime example of that. It's a nuisance. It's expensive, both directly and indirectly. Okay? Got to take time off work to go down to the cop shop during normal business hours to do the registration paperwork. You've got to take time off work to go pick up your CPL. Of course, if you got the CPL, you can bypass some of the foolishness of the registration process. Okay? But there is the expense of obtaining the CPL, the class, the annual license fees. The goal of all of this red tape is to get a list of gun owners. Okay? Because registration leads to confiscation, and the only way the antis can effectively confiscate the guns without really upsetting the rest of the masses is they need to know where they are. Otherwise, they've got to go house to house, and that's everybody. Okay? And they don't want to do that. Okay? And I mean, we're talking to hardcore antis. Okay? Not the people who think gun control will somehow make them safer. The ones who have not really thought through the process. It does represent an expansion of government control and intrusion into our lives. Okay? So those are the fundamental tenets of everything that the gun grabbers try to do. Okay? If we talk about registration, the reality of this is very, very few states have any form of registration. Our neighbor states of Indiana and Ohio have none. No registration of pistols or long guns. It's not an issue. Never has been. Okay? The antis also ignore the fact that we have a very, very good system in place, the National Instant Check System. Okay? They want background checks. They say you need to be background checked to prove you are not, you're unclean if you want to own a gun, but you're not that unclean because you've gone through a background check. Okay? They ignore the existence of the National Instant Check System. The thing they don't like about it is the fact that it's instant. We can get cleared quickly unless there is some type of a problem. I personally don't like the NICS system. Okay? It is fundamentally wrong. There is a precept here in the United States that we are innocent until proven guilty. And having to go through any type of a clearance to buy a lawful product is to me very, very troubling. That's why I don't like NICS. But I'll tolerate it for one reason only, for the sake of the dealers. Because these poor guys were getting sued if a gun they sold 10 years ago was stolen and then is subsequently used in a crime and harms someone. Okay? And they're claiming, well, you shouldn't have sold the gun to that guy in the first place. He's irresponsible. Well, I think NICS provides an opportunity for a defense. Now, anytime you go to court, there's a risk, but I still think NICS does give an opportunity for a defense. They've at least been duly diligent, and the government has said, yeah, it's okay. You know, this guy's got a clean record. Okay. The antis also try to say, okay, firearms are an unregulated product. Okay. The Consumer Product Safety Commission needs to be involved. Okay. With respect to ammunition, the EPA needs to be involved because it's lead. Okay. And people, you know, that's a hot button. Lead in the environment, bad in the eyes of most people. They don't know that the lead used in bullets does not leach into the water supply. It's very benign. And we have science on our side for that. But they ignore it. They also ignore the existence of the Sporting Arms and Ammunitions Manufacturing Institute. The industry has regulated itself and proofed the safety of their guns and ammo for decades. And they provide a very, very useful service. So the industry has policed itself, and it is well regulated. If it was not, the manufacturers could not get product liability insurance. And they'd be out of business otherwise. Another gambit, safe storage. As we refer to it on the pro-gun side, lock up your safety law. A one-size-fits-all solution to kids getting into guns. Got to keep them locked up. Well, you know, I didn't need to be told that. And of course, if they're going to put a safe storage law in place, again, how are they going to enforce it? Well, you're going to have to register, and they're going to come into your house and look at your safe storage practice, just as they did in Australia and Canada and Great Britain and other places. Okay? That's what they want. They want the list. They want to know where the guns are and who owns them. Okay? Again, an expansion of government control and intrusion adds cost. Okay? The reality of it is, okay, most gun owners engage in safe storage practices. They don't need to be told to do that. All good gun owners know where their guns are, like your kids. You know where your guns are every night when you go to bed. Okay? Gun safes are wonderful. And boy, the prices have come down on those things over the last 20 years. And they're good places to store a whole lot of stuff. In my gun safe, I got back up all my computer systems. I got some coins I've got stashed. I got jewelry in there. I mean, put it to good use. Okay? It makes sense. And I didn't need a law to tell me to do that. Okay? Just government, leave me alone. I know what I'm supposed to do. And there is no one, and most firearms are sold with gun locks. Okay? That was a political trade-off that was made to get the Lawful Commerce in Arms Act passed a few years ago, 10 or 12 years ago now, I believe it is. But you know, it works. I got a whole drawer full of gun locks at home because they're in the safe or they're locked in the cabinet, and that is locked in the room where all my guns are, my gun room. and the front doors are locked and the back door is locked and the alarm system is there. I got a camera on it. You know, I can bring it up on the internet if I want to look at it. You know, I'm duly diligent. I don't need the government because I take my responsibility very, very seriously. I don't need the government to be involved with that. Leave me alone. Okay? And I think most gun owners are very, very responsible for that. But, you know, to make someone of modest means go out and buy a gun safe, no, that's not right. That's wrong. There can be no one-size-fits-all solution. Anybody that's been through an NRA training class knows that every situation is unique and you need to handle storage requirements. The applications that for which you use firearms are all different, and we must be smart about what we do. So the best gun safety is right here. Have your wits about you. Taxes to buy guns, fees to own guns. They always talk about that. They think, you know, guns are bad, so if we tax them, nobody can afford to buy them. And then we don't have guns in circulation, and therefore gun violence goes away. Well, what about the other kind of violence? The violence that is perpetrated by gangs and by bullies. Okay? What about that? Why do they single out gun violence? Isn't all violence bad?
You don't have to register a chain.
Nope. Nope. You don't have to register your fists or feet. And we don't need a bunch of big goons, you know, running good and decent people off the street. So it also, if you've got taxes to pay, there's a reporting. It's going to create a list. Okay? It again is an expansion of government control and intrusion. Reality is, again, guns and ammo are already heavily taxed. There is a 11% excise tax levied on long guns in the initial sale into the chain of distribution, a 10% tax on handguns. I believe it's 10% on ammunition. Okay? Under the Pittman-Robertson Act. Now notice that the tax on long guns was higher than the tax on short guns, as John Wayne called pistols. Okay? Why is that? Because this money is earmarked for conservation. Hunters pay for conservation. These monies come back into each individual state, pro rata, you know, predicated on the sales of these firearms. We get a lot of it here in Michigan, and it is a constant battle to keep state legislatures from raiding these funds that should be used for wildlife conservation. Okay. There's also tax on archery tackle and fishing tackle to benefit those aspects of conservation as well. Now notice I didn't say hiking boots, backpacks, binoculars. Okay? The hunters are paying for the non-hunters in terms of supporting. And you know what? We're glad to do it. This tax was meant to be temporary when it was enacted many, many years ago. They were going to take it off. The legislature, the federal legislature, Congress was going to take it off. The sportsmen said, no, we have to provide for the future. So they left it on. That was a conscious decision of the hunters and the industry. We want to support it. And quite frankly, I can't quote, I'll look the years up. I'm not going to guess, but I will look that information up for you. But this is something that is very, very unique to us, okay? And quite frankly, I don't want the other people involved. You know, the sports of the great outdoors, you know, northern Michigan and here in particular, you know, I don't mind other folks. God bless them and welcome to the great outdoors. But I want these lands to be open for hunting. And if we're the ones that are paying for it, I think we've got a bigger say-so. And generally, this is used for land acquisition and maintenance. Okay. Of course, we're also paying, again, as I mentioned earlier, a fee for our CPLs, both the initial licensing and renewal. So we are heavily taxed. We're paying for this stuff. Okay? And we're paying enough, in my opinion. And then there's always the technology gambit, the smart guns. Okay? Now, what did everybody learn about safeties on a firearm in your training classes? A safety on a firearm. If the firearm has one. Old revolvers don't. Trap guns don't. My BT-99 has no safety on it whatsoever. Okay? Because it'll cost me a target if I call for the bird and I have the safety on. Okay? But they think if we create these smart guns, they'll be foolproof. And only the authorized owner can use them. I think this is the outgrowth of the most recent James Bond movie, Skyfall. You remember he had the smart gun in there? Promptly lost it when he was thrown into the pit with the giant iguana that probably wouldn't harm anybody in reality. Okay? Okay. Oh, very expensive double rifle in there, by the way. I looked the maker up on that and the price that appears later in the movie. Gorgeous gun. So I blurted something out in the middle of the movie when I saw that. My wife and my son just hung their head. I'm a gun guy. What could I say, right? But what these people don't realize is that this is going to the redesign of the firearm to accommodate an electronic trigger, an electronic device like you saw in the movie, is horribly expensive. The one smart gun that they prototyped was going to carry, it was a 22 target pistol, carried an $1,800 price tag. Okay? And it does the same thing as a Browning Buckmark or a Ruger Mark III, you know, $250, $300 guns, you know. So you're paying $1,500 for something that's not reliable and that you're really not supposed to trust in the first place. Never, ever, ever trust mechanical safety. But you remember the big 3 safety rules? Always be muzzle conscious. Muzzle always in a safe direction. Keep your finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until you're ready to shoot. Don't load the gun until you're ready to put it into action. Now, of course, personal safety sidearms, when you put them in their pocket, first put them in your holster, they're ready for action. Okay? So bear those in mind. You are the most reliable safety on your firearm. The antis also try generational, what I would term as a generational tactics. They apparently think we don't have an institutional memory. Okay? The gambits that they're running now, national registration, gun owner licensing, the Dodd Bill in 1964, when I was 11 years old. That's what they talked about there. And here we are, how many years later? They're still talking about the same thing. It's a bad idea then, it's a bad idea now. Doesn't change. But they think we forget. And you know, if we don't pass this along to the youngsters, they may slip it past us. I mean, they are tenacious. Our opposition is tenacious. They want to wear us down. Another aspect of what I would term a generational tactic is they want to outlaw bequests of guns. They'll outlaw a gun, but it's okay for you to keep it, but when you die, it's got to be surrendered to be destroyed. Okay. The reality, fortunately, is our institutional memory is good. Okay. And the guys that get hurt the worst by, or stand to get hurt the worst by some of this, are some of the high-end collectors of firearms. The guys who've said, you know, I don't really want to buy gold or silver. I'd rather buy a gun as an inflation hedge. You know? And paintings, outdoor art, Hummel figurines, jewelry, okay, for its, that has an intrinsic value to be sure if it is made of a precious metal, but there is some art value to it as well. Historic value, if they can be sourced to something or somebody, okay? That's what, the people that really stand to get hurt by gambits such as I described, that you can't leave your guns to a family member or a friend after you pass. There's the gambit of the gun show. The false claim by the antis that they are unregulated. Well, anybody that goes to a gun show knows you're doing a Form 4473. You got to license the pistols when you buy them. And you can't buy a pistol outside of your state of residence. And that's been true since 1968. So there is no gun show loophole. There is no gun trafficking legally. Okay? They confuse illicit transactions with legal transactions, and they wrap this into the gun show issue, in part. Okay? There are also false claims regarding things that are sold at gun shows. I remember one reporter coming out and said, I was able to buy this hand grenade at a gun show. Well, it was a blue, inert, paperweight training aid. Hole in the bottom, They don't know. They just don't know. So there are false claims that, they're selling all kinds of destructive devices on an unregulated basis, that they are arms bazaars for the bad guys. The reality is it is an attack on lawful commerce. The reality is it is an attack on freedom of assembly. The reality is efforts to regulate gun shows are attacks on political free speech. If you think about it, when you go to a gun show, how much pro-gun information is disseminated? How much pro-candidate information is disseminated? How much face-to-face networking goes on among concerned patriots? A bunch of it. And you see the antis have nothing comparable. And it makes them crazy. We have a positive experience. It's fun to go to a gun show. It's a blast. You're among like-minded people. It's a comfortable environment. You're looking at cool stuff you want to buy, And the antis have you ever seen an anti-gun show? An anti-gun range? What do they do there? I don't know. They've got nothing that's comparable. But the free speech, most of all, that occurs at those gun shows is, in my opinion, what they're going after. That's what they really want to knock out. Okay? Our ability to network. Okay? The other thing, the way they attack gun shows is by their definition. Okay. I don't need any responses here necessarily to this, but I will suspect we have more than 2 firearms present in this room. You're only going to need one more to get there. Okay? I can attest that for a fact. Okay? So, and probably somebody at one of these tables has said, I saw a good deal on a gun here, or I've got something for sale. Guess what, folks? Under certain definitions that have been advanced to regulate gun shows, we have a gun show here. You could end up with a gun show at your house. I certainly could at mine. 2 or more people present, 2 or more guns present. Talk about trading one. You got a gun show. And what do they want? A list of everybody that attends. And they make the operators of the show criminally liable if they don't get it. Okay? Reality, National Firearms Act 1934 regulates what can be sold and not sold. Gun Control Act in 1968 says you're basically limited to your state of residence to buy a gun, especially short guns. Long guns, contiguous states if the states allow it. Firearms Owners Protection Act in 1968. We haven't had a transferable civilian receiver made for a fully automatic firearm since 1986. 28 years. Made the guys that had them wealthy instantly. Okay. What used to be a $2,000 or $3,000 gun is now a $40,000 to $50,000 gun for a transferable, fully automatic firearm. Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. There are 26,000 some laws at all federal, state, and local levels that regulate buying guns, selling guns, where you can shoot them, what you can shoot in terms of caliber, where you can shoot. Plenty of laws. And there is absolutely no evidence that bad guys get their guns at gun shows. Another gambit, divide and conquer. They try to pit one group of gun owners against another. Trap shooters against the run and gun guys. Hunters against people who want to own AR platform rifles for personal defense. Why do you need that machine gun? Of course, they mischaracterize it. It's not a machine gun. It's a modern sporting rifle, semi-automatic action, something that has been around since, I believe, 1896. Maybe even a little bit before that. The C96 Mauser is a semi-automatic, manufactured in 1896. If you've seen the movie Joe Kidd, that's in that movie. You can tell I pay a lot of attention to the guns that are in the movies. Okay. They do pit one group against another. They also do the good gun, bad gun thing. Oh, your trap gun is good. Your modern sporting rifle is bad. Okay. The anti-gunners are in bed with the anti-hunters, the animal rightists on this. Humane Society of the United States, that is not your local animal shelter. They are anti-hunting, anti-gun. Don't do anything with them. Okay? And they are well funded. This business with polar bears. Okay? Preventing hunting of polar bears. They're not endangered. Come on. That's foolishness. They preyed on emotion there. And the business with the ivory trade. They want to outlaw the trade in ivory. It doesn't matter how old the ivory is. The idea, they're saying, well, we can't have ivory trade because they're killing all the elephants. Okay, hunters are killing all the elephants. Well, no, poachers are killing the elephants in countries where they do not allow hunting. Okay, because if you allow hunting, there's an economic incentive to preserve the wildlife population. Absolutely. So, again, confusion, misdirection. But the way they're writing the law on the ivory, it probably affects the knife makers more than anything else. You've got an old knife that's scrimshawed ivory from a walrus. You know, that some whaler carved. They're going to outlaw that. Be illegal. Doesn't matter when you got it. Got an old piano with ivory keys? You're a criminal under this law. Fortunately, I think we'll see the better side of this foolishness. But you get the idea of where these guys are coming from. Why do you need that kind of a gun? Why do you need a high capacity, or what they call high capacity, what I would call standard capacity firearm? Okay. Well, first of all, doesn't have anything to do with need. As long as I'm owning it lawfully, who cares? None of your business. But if you need an answer, my answer is this. I need it for the same reason the police need them. Well, why do the police need them? Because a six-shooter is not enough. When you're dealing with multiple bad guys, a six-shooter is not enough. Okay. Another reality that I think is making the antis a little crazy is the unity among the pro-gun groups in the industry has been quite remarkable. 20 years ago, it was not so. Fortunately, today it is. The ranks have been closed, and the industry and the pro-gun groups front toward the enemy. Now, right now, we are in the political silly season, I will tell you that. It always happens right before an election, And we've got people jockeying for position for endorsements on the pro-gun side. Rumor mongering is rampant on the internet. My advice is keep your feet on the ground. Believe half of what you see and half again what you hear about this. This will sort itself out fairly soon. And then we need to we really need to concentrate on what has to happen in November. Okay? We can't punch ourselves out here in August because the opposition has closed ranks and their situations are not contested by and large. Okay. So we need to avoid infighting, close ranks, and make sure we do the best job we can to elect the right people. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to move the pro-gun agenda, you got to have the votes to do it. Okay. And this involves compromise. It involves swallowing hard sometimes and saying, yeah, you know. And I'll be honest, I'm libertarian at heart. I really am libertarian at heart. Those guys have been around 60 years, and if there are any libertarians in the room here, you know, hardcore, forgive me, but in 60 years they haven't been able to elect a dog catcher. And, you know, you got to put the votes up to move the agenda. We're not going to get it all back at once. We didn't lose it all at once. We're not going to get all our rights back all at once, but we are getting them back. I would close with this, okay? Well, the money game. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions here. I'm obviously a college professor. I'm way too long-winded here. I should have probably said about half of what I've said, but let me close with this. My dad passed away in 1987, and he was very envious of Florida at the time. He was 84 years old when he passed. And he was very, very envious of Florida at the time because they had shall issue concealed carry. And he said, we'll never see it in Michigan. It'll never happen. And we'll never roll back Gun Control Act in 1968. It's only going to get worse. And Dad, we done better. And I think we're going to continue to do better, God willing, and if we all stick together. Thank you for your time. I apologize for being so long-winded. Let me answer some questions if I can. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Two statements. You talked about police having firearms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a former officer. The only reason police have firearms is to protect themselves, not you.
That's correct.
And the second thing is, you know the difference between a long gun and a handgun? 15 minutes and a half.
That's exactly right. Yep. Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah, a couple of things. They have the NRA, the oldest civil rights group in the country. I'm glad you also mentioned the black codes and that, because that's really a very important thing to know. This is the NRA was actually the first bulwark against the Ku Klux Klan.
That's correct.
In the late 19th century. And also you mentioned some of the programs. Is Cam & Company still on?
Yes.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
If you get the NRA app and you punch NRA News, it lists all the Cam & Company broadcasts and what time they are.
Great, yeah.
So, yeah, they're still on. Absolutely.
Thanks, David.
Sure. Yes, sir.
In your description of the NRA programs, you didn't mention Eddie Eagle.
No, I did not. Eddie Eagle is a highly successful firearm safety program for children. Teaches a real simple message. If you see a gun, stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult.
Well, I was Eddie Eagle one time.
Very good. Very good. Appreciate doing that. It has reached millions of children. It is an extremely popular program in the public schools and in many areas in the Safety City programs here in the state of Michigan.
Program up at the Grosse Pointe War Memorial.
Yes, they did. Last week it was. That's correct. I saw that.
If anyone has kids and they want to educate them on firearms, try Eddie Eagle. It's really good.
It's the message, Eddie Eagle, interestingly enough, is not a lot different from what is taught to law enforcement officers. If you find yourself in a bad situation, stop, don't get in any farther, exit the kill zone, radio for backup. There's not a lot of difference in the message.
Nope.
Because it's universal, it's simple, and it works. Yes, sir?
Can you give us any insight on what's happening with, on the international level with the treaties that they're trying to organize that all our gun registration records go on the United Nations?
Yeah. The prime mover behind that is the IANSA, International Action Network on Small Arms. The bait and switch that they use is they say, we're going after the big gun runners, the guys that are selling to the mercenaries, the guys that are selling the tanks and the aircrafts and the helicopters and all the heavy weapons. Okay. The reality is they want to regulate all firearms. They want lists, and there have been a number of countries that have signed on to that treaty, the usual cast of characters.
I think Clinton was involved with trying to get that.
Yeah, the U.S. Senate isn't buying it. Okay, but the problem with treaties is this: they lay out there forever, and so long as it's out there, it's a risk. Okay, if there is a way to kill it, they will try to kill it. IANSA is a non-government organization at the United Nations. The NRA ILA is a non-government organization at the United Nations. We are actively engaged there, and we have had the benefit of the wisdom of former ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. Okay, good man that he is. So they're monitoring this on a daily basis. I mean, we're not going to get blindsided, but it's a tough league to play in. You know, we don't elect those guys. You know, like we do elect the Senate, and that's why we've got to be sure we keep our thumbs on them. And we have to focus on guns. We cannot be... NRA is a one-issue organization. We are the National Rifle Association, not the National Republican Association. And that is frustrating to a lot of our members who think we should engage in other issues. We can't. We cannot waver on that. And that's how we can hold discipline in difficult votes, because we do not waver. And the elected officials know it. So if push comes to shove, they don't fool with us. And we've got to keep it that way. Yes, sir.
Editorializing on your Leave Me Alone.
Yes, sir.
Frederick Douglass, a great abolitionist and women's rights, said when asked after the Freedman Act were enacted, the Freedman amendments to the Constitution, he was asked by a member of Congress, what can we do to help the emancipated freedmen? He said, leave them alone.
Exactly.
There you go. That's
exactly.
Leave us all alone.
Yep. We know what we have to do. We get this side of the room here. Yes, sir.
Mr. Coy, a few words about the election volunteer coordinators.
A few words about the EVCs. I would be happy to do so. The EVC program was originally designed to attempt to get an EVC in every congressional district in the U.S. So we would have 435 of them. After many, many years of effort, that was not possible. It proved not to be possible. There are just some areas where we couldn't pull it together. So the EVCs have kind of been amalgamated on a state basis. Wayne Blank is a very active EVC down in the Monroe, Michigan area. He has been responsible for orchestrating some NRA days at Cabela's, which have been very, very well attended. The Cabela's in Dundee has been very supportive of those events. The idea of the EVC is to serve as a facilitator to connect interested volunteers with pro-gun candidates in their areas. And if we know who the pro-gunner is, we've got a volunteer, we want to connect these guys, and then they need to take it from there. Okay? So that's what the Election Volunteer Coordinator program is about. So. Yes, sir?
Just a quick fact that more people are killed in this country by baseball bats and clubs than have been killed by guns. So just think if the other guy happened to have a gun, he might still be alive.
That's correct. The other thing they do with that statistic is they always say, well, it's the children, it's the children. Well, if you're under, the way they count it is if you're under 21, you're a child. Okay? So the youths that die from violence, you know, we would term them legally emancipated minors. They are no longer in school. They have chosen a life of crime. They're in a gang. The 13 to 16 to 18-year-olds that are selling narcotics, doing numbers, engaging in illicit activities. Okay, these are the kids that are getting killed. And, you know, it evokes, you know, images of infants. And when those accidents occur, they are tragic. There is an excellent graphic out from the Center on Disease Control. I've got it on my tablet. I can show it to you here. That breaks it down by age and by the top 10 causes of death. The other thing that confuses the firearms statistic are suicides. Okay. And, you know, I've had the statistic thrown in my face, well, guns are killing more people than automobiles. Well, when you shrink suicides out, because I don't think you can count it, the comparison just simply isn't valid. And there's also the idea that every death by a firearm is a wrongful death. Okay? Not true. Okay? A good guy taking out a bad guy, it's still toted up as a firearms death. Skews the statistic. Now, a lot of firearms deaths are a bad guy, one bad guy killing another bad guy. Well, forgive me for being harsh, but I don't see that as a problem. Okay, there's a bad guy gone, as long as nobody gets caught in the crossfire, especially if they're able then to arrest and incarcerate the bad guy that did it. We got a twofer. You know, works for me. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
It's amazing that Chicago has such strict gun control, but it's one of the biggest cities for the biggest amount of murders and killing.
It's just.
But who has the guns in Chicago? Think about it. It's the
The
bad
bad
people.
guys.
That, I'm not talking about just the thugs in government too. The regulators.
Yeah.
No, really.
Yeah.
Think about
I have. It is completely baffling to me. It is totally incomprehensible. My solution. I'm not going anywhere near the place. You know, let them wallow in their own quagmire.
So, what is your personal feeling? I know everybody has their own. What's the goal? Okay.
What's the goal?
The goal, yeah.
I think the goal is, and we've come a long way toward accomplishing this goal. I think the goal is to make the average American who is ambivalent about firearms ownership. It's not their issue, okay? To make them understand that law-abiding gun owners are no threat. In fact, we are an asset, and that we are not unclean. I mean, it really comes down to something that simple.
But who's telling him this? It's our government.
Well, the government is telling them the bad things right now, aided and abetted by the media.
Yeah, it's the government.
What we are trying to do is through alternative media, particularly the internet, and the pro-gun movement has owned the internet since the old days of computer bulletin boards. My sleep pattern is still disrupted from staying up until after midnight so I could get a cheap long-distance rate to call into a pro-gun computer to get the latest news and to upload my latest news to that particular database. Okay, we have owned that, and our community, our online communities, are just incredibly strong. So we are getting the word out. I also think evidence that it has become more accepted are when you're looking at television programming, and we've got swamp people. Okay, you've got we've had Top Gun, the competition shoot on TV. We have a multitude of hunting and fishing shows, shows about the great outdoors. We've got a new program on the History Channel, The Hunt. These were unheard of, absolutely unheard of 10 years ago. Okay, we have become more and more mainstream, and I believe we've been successful. I know we have been successful because we have been patient. We have been polite. We have not been emotional about it. We have been very, very matter of fact, and people respect that. Okay, and I think so long as we maintain that steady course of politeness, forthrightness, accentuating the positive, and I think if we do that, we will, for the moment, carry the day, because this is going to truly be an eternal battle.
And vote for a new president.
Yes. I am. The other thing is Chief Craig's forthright statements in the city of Detroit. What, and also the sheriff of Milwaukee County. What outstanding statements. You know. Yes, ma'am.
What is your position on the mental health aspect of the background checks? I understand how you feel about the background checks, but most often when there's a horribly public tragedy, they find that the individual who got his hands on the gun, like Sandy Hook, where the man couldn't get his own gun, who had mental health issues. Is that just kind of a red herring to put people off, or is there validity?
The law, as it stands right now, NICS, if someone has been adjudicated mentally ill, not a doctor's opinion, adjudicated mentally ill, it is supposed to be entered into the NICS system. That is the law. Michigan is in compliance. There are some states out there that still are not in compliance. And some of these people are falling through the cracks. The law enforcement will tell you, if you talk to law enforcement officers, they will tell you that this system is broken beyond belief. There's no place to put the mentally ill people. I know that sounds harsh. I mean, put them away. There's no place to take them to get counseling, to get treatment. Volunteer organizations are doing wonderful things. The Mental Health First Responders here in Southeast Michigan, volunteer organization. They did a presentation to an alumni gathering of my college fraternity, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, at our Founders Day banquet a year and a half ago. Remarkable work these people are doing on a volunteer basis, unsung heroes. Another tragedy that we have got to step up and address are young returning military veterans. The rate of suicide among these young warriors, these heroes, is heartbreaking. It's got to stop. We got to figure it out. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. You cannot have someone's inalienable right to own a gun, God-given right to own a gun and defend themselves, taken away because of somebody's opinion. Which is why I think going before a judge is probably what has to be done. And if you go before a judge and that is declared, you need to be able to go before the judge to have it removed. Okay? So long as there is that element of fairness, I think that's probably the best we can do. But yeah, it's an issue and difficult. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a little concern, even though I'm not affected by it, and pray I never am. But the whole mental health issue, some of these horrible things that are happening are directly or indirectly tied to some of the medications these people have been put on, including our returning vets. They're handed cocktails of medications while they're serving. They're actually frightening. But in light of the new expanded health care questionnaires when you go see your family physician and all the background checks, okay, quite frankly, I wouldn't want to tell my doctor that I was feeling a little blue last week for fear he might report me as being depressed. Yeah. And I certainly won't tell them how many guns I have in my house or where I keep my ammo or anything else, because I don't know that there's any checks and balances or any, because right now in this litigious liability, I mean, every little thing,
You are exactly correct.
I'm
And
not
I will
sure
not
what I
answer
wanna
those
say,
questions
but I'm
either.
just like, does anybody else feel as...
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Because there's nothing, let's just say 20 years ago, I saw a counselor for a depression that was brought on by a horrible family crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never was hospitalized or anything, but there's a record of that,
Yep.
okay? How many people in this room can honestly say they've never had a depressed moment in their lives? Or they didn't go through some kind of crisis where they lost all hopelessness?
Yep.
We already know how that information could be used against us.
Yep.
If we're lawful gun owners and we've dutifully, lawfully registered our pistols with the police and all that stuff.
Yep.
Well, it's the world
I'm
that
sorry,
we
I'm
live
not
in.
mean to be preaching to the choir.
No, your concerns are well justified, and I can share with you that the association is very, very mindful of those. Believe me, they are. That is, we have physicians who serve on the board of directors, and a lot of doctors are gun owners, and believe me, we've heard from them loud and clear, and we didn't need to because it was already on our radar screen. Okay, it can't happen, because of opinion. Yes, sir.
On the mental, as you know from our previous contacts, I'm a shrink, 50 years as social worker.
Yes, sir.
And the problem is not with the law the way it's currently structured. It's the government abuse of the law.
Yes.
For instance, returning veterans with post-traumatic stress syndrome have been identified by therapists as
Yep.
having a mental
Yep.
issue
Yep.
requiring treatment and been put on the
Stigmatized.
Yep.
Yeah.
on the list.
Yeah.
Yep.
The lack of the adjudication is the government overreach.
Yes.
Some people with PSTD should not be operating a firearm or a vehicle, probably. Most need some help to deal with daily life and get the balance back.
Yes, sir.
But when you talk about everybody here has had, a bad day or a depressed day, add grief.
Yeah.
You tell me the capacity of a person who's in full grief because a most important person in their life has just died. That's not a time for them to be drinking. It's not a time for them to be carrying a gun around. It's not a time for them to get into arguments. But you help them to not do things that are going to be a problem.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
diminish their God-given right to defend themselves.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep. You lose your bird dog. I mean, how traumatic is that? I'm sorry. I mean,
My concern is that people might be afraid to go seek the help they need for fear that the stormtroopers are going to come knocking on their door, go through their house, and confiscate everything in order to protect them while they're going through.
your fear is well justified. Your fear is well justified.
You can see I'm kind of passionate.
Yes. Yes. Your fear is well justified. Yes, ma'am. We're going to take one here, and then we're going to probably. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, as far as the VA, and this goes along with your concern, VA, when I went down to the veterans thing, because I needed a primary doctor for a transplant at U of M, the VA doctor asked me if I had, if I drank alcohol. I said, yes, I drink one drink at Christmas time of year, one glass of wine. The doctor told me, you don't drink alcohol. I said, no, you don't understand. I drink one drink, right? I went to another doctor because they said I was too difficult for them. They told me the same thing. So you're supposed to lie to the system. You're not supposed to even have one drink. You're supposed to lie to the system. And what I did is I took out my CPL card and laid it on the desk. And I told the doctor, don't ask me this question.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the system is so far gone through the VA, these vets are coming back. You can't tell your doctor anything because they will put you away and that's it. You're done.
Folks, once again, thank you for your everybody's attention here. You know, we've been 90 minutes. I'm available to visit as a sidebar.